Hi, everybody. Welcome back to day number 3 of Reading Ritual with Miss Carmen. That would be me. All right, so I'm glad to see that some of you have returned, and I'm really excited. That means that you are very interested in the story that we're currently reading, and that's really important to me. So, for those of you that haven't joined us before, you'll be able to go back and look at the videos for the other chapters that we read to get us to this point today. And you'll also learn why we're doing this. We're taking breaks in the middle of our summer time since we have a lot of indoor time these days. I thought we would read together, learn together, and at the same time, we are logging our reading minutes. I'm entering them into this website called Save the Children, and they have a reading program. So when we log in all these reading minutes, other children from other parts of the country that don't have access to books during the summer or year round, and they don't have access to other resources, will get some books and will get some resources. So while we're sitting here enjoying a story and learning and reading together, we're also helping someone else. We're helping another child who may not be able to have reading time. And if they get to watch this video, if they have access to this video or these series of videos, then they'll also get to have the same reading experience here with us. So thank you for returning. Thank you for doing your part to help another little child, another little kid just like you. I am going to read the next chapters. I believe we're on chapter 7. We'll see how far we can get. We kind of left at this very exciting place. But also, I think that it's really important that I share with you what used to happen to me when I was a child. When I was a child, I didn't know how to speak English. And so I went to school not knowing any English words at all. I didn't know how to communicate with everyone else. And yes, I was teased and I was told that I was dumb and I was bullied a little bit. But I always had two little champions in my corner who always, silently, but always were encouraging, and they supported me through my learning process. So I brought with me two champions for all of us as well. Again, this is Gus Duck and this is Susie May. And they sit right over my right shoulder. Looks like it's left on there. But they like to see all of you, and they also enjoy the stories too. So we'll get started, okay? I'm going to just put on my sorry, wrong glasses. Okay, there we go. Now I can see. So where were we? Okay, so in chapter 6 of this book, Stuart Little by E.B. White, and the pictures are by Garth Williams. I hope everybody can see that. Oops, there's a little glare there. I've got to do that better. The last chapter that we were at, Stuart had taken the bus all by himself, and he had gone to Central Park, and he went to the pond where they have races, little boat races, and he got himself onto one of the boats as the ship's captain. So let's see what happens. Chapter 7. And we are starting right at the top of the hour, so we're going to log in our minutes today as well, so I know how many minutes to log into our website. And all that information, I do put it in the post below this video, so your mom and dad can take a look at that too. All right, so here we go. You ready? Okay, I see that you're all settled in. Everybody's got their blankets or their pillows or their snacks. Okay, here we go. The sailboat race. When the people in Central Park learned that one of the toy sailboats was being steered by a mouse in a sailor suit, they all came running. Soon the shores of the pond were so crowded that a policeman was sent from headquarters to announce that everybody would have to stop pushing, but nobody did. People in New York like to push each other. The most excited person of all was the boy who owned the Lillian B. Womrath. He was a fat, sulky boy of 12 named Leroy. I wonder if they could have used another word to describe Leroy. We'll come back to that. Leroy wore a blue serge suit and a white necktie stained with orange juice. "Come back here," he called to Stuart. "Come back here and get on my boat. I want you to steer my boat. I will pay you $5 a week and you can have every Thursday afternoon and a radio in your room." "I thank you for your kind offer," replied Stuart, "but I am happy aboard the Wasp, happier than I have ever been in all my life." And with that, he spun the wheel over smartly and headed his schooner downward toward the starting line, where Leroy was turning his boat around by poking it with a long stick, ready for the start of the race. So this is a couple of pictures that show what the park looks like, what it looks like where they're all heading over to the pond. Okay. Uh-oh, looks like my cover is tearing. I'm going to have to fix that before next time. But for now, we're just going to keep going. We're on page 38. In case you're following along and you have this book, this is where we're at, page 38. And so you can read along with me too, okay? Or your mom or dad can read along too. "I'll be the referee," said a man in a bright green suit. "Is the Wasp ready?" "Ready, sir," shouted Stuart, touching his hat. "Is the Lillian B. Womrath ready?" asked the referee. "Sure, I'm ready," said Leroy. "To the north end of the pond and back again," shouted the referee. "On your mark, get set, go." "Go!" cried the people along the shore. "Go!" cried the owner of the Wasp. "Go!" yelled the policeman. And away went the two boats for the north end of the pond, while the seagulls wheeled and cried overhead, and the taxicabs tooted and honked from 72nd Street, and the West Wind, which had come halfway across America to get to Central Park, sang and whistled in the rigging and blew spray across the decks, stinging Stuart's cheeks with tiny fragments of flying peanut shell tossed up from the foamy deep. "This is the life for me," Stuart murmured to himself. "What a ship! What a day! What a race!" Before the two boats had gone many feet, however, an accident happened on shore. The people were pushing each other harder and harder in their eagerness to see the sport, and although they didn't really mean to, they accidentally pushed the policeman so hard that they pushed him right off the concrete wall and into the pond. He hit the water in a sitting position, and he got wet clear up to the third bottom of his jacket. He was soaked. So there's a picture of the Mr. Police Officer who accidentally got pushed into the pond. What do you think might have happened? Let's read on to find out. I think I can take a guess. This particular policeman was not only a bit heavy and a big man, but he had just eaten a big, heavy meal, and the wave he made went curling outward, cresting and billowing, upsetting all manner of small craft and causing every owner of a boat on the pond to scream with delight and consternation. When Stuart saw the great wave approaching When Stuart saw the great wave approaching, he jumped for the rigging, but he was too late. Towering above the wasp like a mountain, the wave came crashing and piling along the deck, caught Stuart up and swept him over the side and into the water where everybody supposed he would have drowned. Stuart had no intention of drowning. He kicked hard with his feet and thrashed hard with his tail, and in a minute or two he climbed back aboard the schooner, cold and wet, but quite unharmed. And he took his place at the helm, and he could hear people cheering for him and calling, "Add a mouse, Stuart, add a mouse." Oh boy. So this is what happened. Can you see that? That big wave just came crashing onto the wasp. And there's Stuart climbing back on. Whew, I'm so glad he made it. I was a little worried there for a second. Stuart looked over and saw that the wave had capsized the Lillian B. Womrath, but that she had righted herself and was sailing on her course close by. And she stayed close alongside till both boats reached the north end of the pond. Here Stuart put the wasp about, and Leroy turned the Lillian around with his stick, and away the two boats went for the finish line. This race isn't over yet, thought Stuart. The first warning he had that there was trouble ahead came when he glanced into the wasp's cabin and observed that the barometer had fallen sharply. That can only mean one thing at sea: dirty weather. Suddenly, a dark cloud swept over the sun, blotting it out and leaving the earth in shadows. Stuart shivered in his wet clothes. He turned up his sailor collar around his neck, and when he spied the wasp's owner among the crowd on shore, he waved his hat and called out, "Dirty weather ahead, sir. Wind backing into southwest seas, confused, glass falling." "Never mind the weather," cried the owner. "Watch out for flotsam dead ahead." Stuart peered ahead in the gathering storm, but saw nothing except gray waves with white crests. The world seemed cold and ominous. Stuart glanced behind him. There came the sloop, boiling along fast, rolling up a bow wave and gaining steadily. "Look out, Stuart! Look out where you're going!" Stuart strained his eyes, and suddenly, dead ahead, right in the path of the wasp, he saw an enormous, giant paper bag looming up on the surface of the pond. The bag was empty and riding high, its open end gaping wide like the mouth of a cave. Stuart spun the wheel over, but it was too late. The wasp drove her bowsprit, I don't know what that is, but I'm assuming it's the front of the boat, straight into the bag. With a fearful whoosh, the schooner slowed down and came up into the wind with all sails flapping. Just at this moment, Stuart heard a splintering crash, saw the bow of the Lillian plow through his rigging, and felt the whole ship tremble from stem to stern, with the force of the collision. This doesn't sound good, does it? Sorry, I have to have a little bit of tea sometimes so that my mouth doesn't get all dry while I'm reading. Plus, I'm getting a little emotional, so I want to make sure that I remain calm as I'm reading this to you. "A collision!" shouted the crowd on shore. In a jiffy, the two boats were in a terrible tangle. Little boys on shore screamed and danced up and down. Meanwhile, the paper bag sprang a leak and began to fill. The wasp couldn't move because of the bag. The Lillian B. Womrath couldn't move because her nose was stuck in the wasp's rigging. Waving his arms, Stuart ran forward and fired off his gun. Then he heard above the other voices on the shore the voice of the owner of the wasp yelling directions and telling him what to do. Oh boy, here I'm going to show you a picture of the wasp caught in that bag. That is pretty scary. Look at those big clouds. Do you think Stuart's going to make it out of this? I don't know. Let's keep reading and find out, shall we? Stuart, down jib, down staysail. Stuart jumped for the halyards, and the jib and the forestaysail came rippling down. Cut away all paper bags, roared the owner. Stuart whipped out his pocket knife and slashed away bravely at the soggy bag until he had the deck cleared. Now back your foresail and give her a full, screamed the owner of the Wasp. Stuart grabbed the foresail boom and pulled with all of his might. Slowly the schooner paid off and began to gather headway. As soon as she heeled over to the breeze, she rolled her rail out from under the Lillian's nose, shook herself free, and stood away to the southward. A loud cheer went up from the bank. Stuart sprang to the wheel and answered it. Then he looked back, and to his great joy, he perceived that the Lillian had gone off in a wild direction and was yawing all over the pond. Straight and true sailed the Wasp, with Stuart at the helm. After she had crossed the finish line, Stuart brought her alongside the wall and was taken ashore and highly praised for his fine seamanship and daring. Wow, he did make it. Look at that. And all those city people, all the city folk gathered around him. You know what I love about this chapter? It shows that no matter how small you are, you can still accomplish daring feats and great works. So don't ever let anyone tell you that just because you're small, you can't do some things. Of course, there are some things that you just can't do, but if it's not dangerous, we should try. And if it is a little bit dangerous, we need to make sure that we have an adult present. And I wish that Stuart had his parents present, but he is a little bit older in this chapter. You know, remember, mice grow a little bit faster than children do, so he's kind of okay, I guess. But that's what I like. I like that he has confidence in himself to do what he loves, and even though it was a little tricky, he did follow directions from an adult and got himself out of that situation. I think that's pretty good. The owner was delighted and said it was the happiest day of his life. He introduced himself to Stuart, said that in private life he was Dr. Paul Carey, a surgeon dentist. He said model boats were his hobby and that he would be delighted to have Stuart take command of his vessel any time. Everybody shook hands with Stuart, everybody, that is, except the policeman, who was too wet and mad to shake hands with a mouse. When Stuart got home that night, his brother George asked him what he had been doing all day. "Oh, just knocking around," replied Stuart. So there's the poor policeman. I do feel sorry for him. He did get all wet and soggy, and it was an accident. Oh well, accidents happen, don't they? They happen every day in life. We have a few more minutes. We're on chapter 8, and I think it's a little bit long, but let's see how far we get, okay? So we're at the top of the hour, right? Okay, so we'll keep going, and we are at about 20 minutes. Let's see how far we get, okay? This is kind of exciting. This is chapter 8, Margalo. Because he was so small, Stuart was often hard to find around the house. His father and his mother and his brother George seldom could locate him by looking for him. Usually they had to call him, and the house often echoed with the cries of Stuart, Stuart! You would come into a room and he might be curled up in a chair, but you wouldn't see him. Mr. Little was in constant fear of losing him and never finding him. He even made him a tiny red cap, such as the hunters wear, so that he would be easier to see. One day, when he was 7 years old, remember, 7 years old in mouse years is older than 7 years old in children's years. That's why he's able to do some more uh, adult-like things. All right? So don't forget, not the same as 7 years old like some of you are. When he was 7 years old, Stuart was in the kitchen watching his mother make tapioca pudding. He was feeling very hungry, and when Mrs. Little opened the door of the electric refrigerator to get something, Stuart slipped inside to see if he could find a piece of cheese. He supposed, of course, his mother had seen him, but when the door swung shut, and he realized he was locked in, it surprised him greatly. Help! He called. It's dark in here. It's cold in the refrigerator. Help! Let me out. I'm getting colder by the minute. But his voice was not strong enough to penetrate the thick wall. In the darkness, he stumbled and fell into a saucer of prunes. The juice was cold. Stuart shivered and his teeth chattered together. It wasn't until a half hour later that Mrs. Little again opened the door and found him standing on a butter plate, beating his arms together to try to keep warm and blowing on his hands and hopping up and down. Mercy! She cried. Stuart, my poor little boy. How about a nip of brandy? Said Stuart. I'm chilled to the bone. But his mother made him some hot broth instead and put him to bed in his little box with a doll's hot water bottle against his feet. Even so, Stuart caught a bad cold, and this turned into bronchitis, and Stuart had to stay in bed for almost 2 weeks. During his illness, the other members of the family were extremely kind to Stuart. Mrs. Little played tic-tac-toe with him. George made him a soap bubble pipe and a bow and arrow, and Mr. Little made him a pair of ice skates out of 2 paper clips. Poor Stuart. So there he is on the butter plate in the refrigerator, stuck, cold, and scared. And there he is in his bed while he's sick, recovering. Oh dear. One cold afternoon, Mrs. Little was shaking her dust cloth out of the window when she noticed a small bird lying on the windowsill, apparently dead. She brought it in and put it near the radiator, and in a short while it fluttered its wings and opened its eyes. It was a pretty little hen bird, brown with a streak of yellow on her breast. The Littles couldn't agree on what kind of bird she was. She's a wall-eyed viro, said George scientifically. I think she's more like a young wren, said Mr. Little. Anyway, they fixed a place for her in the living room and fed her and gave her a cup of water. Soon she felt much better and went hopping around the house, examining everything with the greatest care and interest. Presently she hopped upstairs into Stuart's room when he was lying in bed. Hello, said Stuart. Who are you? Where did you come from? My name is Margalo, said the bird softly in a musical voice. I come from fields once tall with wheat, from pastures deep in fern and thistle. I come from vales of meadow sweet, and I love to whistle. Stuart sat bolt upright in bed. Say that again, he said. I can't, replied Margalo. I have a sore throat. So do I, said Stuart. I've got bronchitis. You better not get too close to me. You might catch it. I'll stay right here by the door, said Margalo. You can use some of my gargle if you want to, said Stuart. And here are some nose drops, and I have plenty of Kleenex. Thank you very much. You are very kind, replied the bird. Did they take your temperature? Asked Stuart, who was beginning to be genuinely worried about his new friend's health. No, said Margalo, but I don't think that will be necessary. Well, we better make sure, said Stuart, because I would hate to have anything happen to you. Here, and he tossed her the thermometer. Margalo put it under her tongue, and she and Stuart sat still for 3 minutes. She took it out and looked at it, turning it slowly and carefully. Normal, she announced. Stuart felt his heart leap for gladness. It seemed to him that he had never seen any creature so beautiful as this tiny bird, and he already loved her. I hope, he remarked, that my parents have fixed you up with a decent place to sleep. So I think that's where we're going to end today, but I want to show you a picture of Margalo taking her temperature and looking at it and announcing that it's normal. I'm very happy to hear that her temperature is okay, and I'm really happy that Stuart has found a new friend. I feel like that's what we're doing here too. So if you want to, you can make some really nice and kind and positive comments down below in our post, and hopefully you'll come back for the rest of, what are we in? Chapter, what did I say? We're in chapter 8. So we're about halfway through chapter 8. So next time we'll finish that chapter and we'll go as long as we can. I'm so happy that I'm continuing to see so many of your names. I'm starting to recognize them. Oops, in the comments below. I'll pick that up in a minute, don't worry. And I'm so happy that we are helping other children get access to books and other resources that they need. As soon as we're done recording here, I'm going to go log in our minutes. It's SaveTheChildren.org reading program in case you or your parents or your friends would like to find out more information. So until next time, I'm Miss Carmen. I'm very, very happy to see all of you. I'm glad that we're reading this book together. And this was day number 4, right? Or day number 3. Now I've got all confused. I will put the right date in the post below because we're doing this in one take. So it is what it is. But I'll make sure I get it right in the post. Thanks for joining me. I will see you next time. Talk to you later. Bye.